Hello everyone, it's Mina as you all know. Today I will be discussing my essay on Handmaid's Tale and Wildfire by Nelson DeMille. First off, I just want to give you guys a little background information. So something that was really oftenly mentioned in my book was the Custer Hill Club. The Custer Hill Club was where a bunch of members went to go discuss how they were going to do a revenge attack on the countries who were affiliated in the 9/11. So first, I want to get to the main characters. So Harry Miller, he was a former NYPD. He's also currently a detective for the FBI. He was sent to the Custer Hill Club to do a routine surveillance, and he was later on found dead near the Custer Hill Club, and his death was made to be seen as a hunting attack. Secondly, we're going to go to John Corey. John Corey was also a former NYT. He was a detective for the FBI. He was sent to identify Harry's body. He later on suspects that he was murdered and decides to go solve the mystery. He is married to Kate Mayfield. Kate Mayfield was an agent for the FBI. She was a lawyer. She was sent along with John to go identify Harry Miller's body, and she later on helps John solve the mystery and suspects that it is a murder. Next is Tom Walsh. Tom Walsh is the head of the FBI. He's the one who sent Harry on his assignment, and he doesn't like John because in the book there was a point where John went against whatever Tom Walsh wanted him to do, and he does not believe that Harry was murdered. And lastly, we're going to go to Maddox. So Maddox was the founder of the Custer Hill Club. He was the murderer of Harry Miller and the head of Project Green. He owns the GoCo Oil Company, and he assessed in the Middle East. So Maddox was one of the main people in the story who had most of the power and most of the authority, but I'll get more into that later on. So this is my summary. So the summary of the book is that Tom Walsh sent FBI Harry Miller to do surveillance on the Custer Hill Club property and detail everyone there. Maddox finds out his reasoning for him being there and captures him. Harry is forced to sit down into meetings about Project Green. Project Green was basically an assignment where Maddox's members of the Custer Hill Club were going to bomb 2 American cities and make it look like a terrorist attack, just so they would be able to launch the plan Wildfire. Wildfire plan was to do a nuclear attack on the Middle East. Harry was later on found dead, and it appeared to be a haunting accident, as I said before. However, John suspects murder and decides to investigate on his own with Kate because no one else really believes what they were saying, and everybody else seen it as a haunting attack. After John and Kate suspects the murder, However, John suspects murder and decides to investigate on his own with Kate because no one else is willing to believe him. So John and Kate later on find the words elf on Harry Miller's body, Nook, and Mad written on his pocket, and then however, Maddox has an elf tower, which stands for extra low frequency, which is led to communicate with submarines or detonate bombs and initiate Project Green. John and Kate, so during the whole story, John and Kate basically attempt to warn people about what Maddox was up to. That's my summary. Okay, so now I'm going to get into my essay. So first off, the social issue that I chosen was violence, because I found that violence kind of intertwined with each theme of mine. So I'm going to tell you guys my thesis. So there were many contrasts that I found from Handmaid's Tale to Wildfire, and some of them were freedom. Because in Handmaid's Tale, they were giving basically absolutely no freedom. Everything they did was watched. People always surrounded them. There's nothing that they did that wasn't seen. And while in Wildfire, they had freedom of their own speech and freedom of their own beliefs to use in their own discretion. Okay, so one of the quotes that I found while to demonstrate that freedom was not given in Handmaid's Tale was, Colleen, please.
I know why there is no glass in front of the watercolor picture of blue irises, and why the window opens only partially, and why the glass is in the shatterproof. It isn't running away they're afraid of. We wouldn't get far. It's those other escapes, the ones you can open in yourself, giving a cutting edge.
Okay, so in this quote, she speaks about the fact that handmaids were not forbidden from jumping out the window or running out the door because they removed all possible ways of suicide. So, after reading this quote, it actually made me analyze the fact that they, like, the handmaids are such slave-like that they can't even kill themselves to get away from their pain because they took away the shower curtains, had shatterproof glasses, and just constantly had people surrounding them and watching them all this while. So, second point, I'm going to go to Wildfire. So, in contrast, in Wildfire, while Maddox was speaking to all the members of the Custer Hill Club, though they felt disgusted or discomforted by how the plan was going to go about, he was still able to make them feel somehow included by asking them how they felt about it. Similar to this quote, Colleen.
Does anyone have any comments? Feel free to say whatever you gotta say to help me out.
So, Maddox saying this basically acknowledges that the people around him, the people who are going to help him fulfill this plan. In my second paragraph, I spoke about sexual violence as a theme in Handmaid's Tale. Sexual violence was a constant theme in Handmaid's Tale for the reason that the handmaids were constantly, aggressively involved in sexual activity with the commander. This is the point I've chosen to back up my statement.
Sex in distorted relation outside of marriage, justified as imaging this is her husband. He puts his hand on my arm, pulls me against him, his mouth on mine. What else comes from such denial? Without a word, both of us shaking how I'd like to. In Serena's parlor with dried flowers on the Chinese carpet, his thin body. A man entirely unknown. It would be like shouting, it would be like shooting someone. My hands goes down. How about that? I could unbutton and then? I want to reach up, taste his skin. He makes me hungry. His fingers move, feeling my arm under the nightgown sleeve, as if his hands won't listen to reason. It is so good to be touched by someone, to be felt so greedily, to feel so greedy. Luke, you'd know, you'd understand. It's you here in another body.
Okay, so in this quote, it basically speaks about how how much the handmaids had to go through, and this has to do with sexual violence because handmaids are forced to be with someone who they don't want to be with because it's embarrassing for the handmaids to have to be doing sexual intercourse with the commander while the wife is standing there watching just to create a baby. So I feel like it violated women and it also violated the handmaids because they had no control over whether they wanted to do it or whether they didn't want to do it. Okay, so moving on, in contrast, there was no sexual violence in Wildfire because John Corey and Kate Mayfield, since they were together, they were able to willingly have sexual intercourse and do many intimate things. Colleen? Cool.
Meet me here, will ya? You show me all the signs. She replies, I'll see you there.
Okay, so in this quote, it just shows how they're willingly doing it and how they're not forced into having sexual intercourse. They're not forced into being together. They're not forced to be touching one another in ways that they don't feel comfortably as they did in The Handmaid's Tale. Lastly, power is commonly seen through both the novels The Handmaid's Tale, because in The Handmaid's Tale, the commander and the aunts had all the power to overrule the handmaids and to just basically direct their lives. Please read the quote.
All you have to do, I tell myself, is keep your mouth shut and look stupid. It shouldn't be that hard.
Okay, so in this quote, it basically speaks about the mindset that the handmaids have in order for them to survive in the Gilead society, because of how the ants and the commanders keep ruling them. They know that they don't have that authority to speak up or tell them how they feel, or else there will be consequences. Lastly, in Wildfire, where Maddox had the power to manipulate and to make people do things because of his high status, and which also gave him power to command people into getting whatever he desired. Okay, so Colleen?
Everyone choose the countries you'd like to add on the A or B list, because we got a lot to go around.
Okay, so in this quote, Maddox, after explaining the Wildfire plan, he basically tells all the members to list a bunch of countries they like to add on the A and B list. So the A list has like the top priorities in which for sure that have already been confirmed that they're going to send a nuclear bomb to. And then the B list are the names that could potentially be added to the A list. So Maddox asking them to, Maddox in this quote, Maddox didn't actually, it wasn't more like him asking them. It was more like he was telling them to add a name to the A and B list. It just seemed really forced. In conclusion, though Wildfire and Handmaid's Tale had many similarities and differences, my social issue of violence was somehow always an outcome of each theme.